The air in the living room felt thick, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to break. I stood there in my wrinkled scrubs, fresh off a grueling shift at the corner drugstore. My sneakers still laced tight because I hadn't even had a moment to unwind. Mom, Valerie, sat rigid on the edge of the floral print couch, her arms folded like a fortress, her lips pressed into that thin line that always signaled judgment. Isabella, my older sister, lounged in the armchair beside her, scrolling through her phone with that effortless poise she wore like armor, her manicured nails tapping softly against the screen.
Dad.
Theodore hovered in the doorway, his eyes fixed on the floor as if the carpet held some secret escape route. Sit down, Ava, Mom said, her voice clipped. No warmth, no preamble. It wasn't an invitation, it was an order. I lowered myself into the chair opposite them, my heart thudding a little too loud in my chest. The room smelled faintly of the lavender candle Mom always burned to keep things calm, but there was nothing calm about this. We need your help, Mom continued, leaning forward slightly, her eyes locking onto mine with that unyielding stare. Family sticks together, right? No questions. I'd heard that line 1,000 times growing up when I gave up my summer job savings to bail Isabella out of her latest failed venture. Or when I handed over my hand-me-down car because she needed it more. But this time, it hit different. Isabella set her phone aside, crossing her legs with a sigh. It's for the boutique. My husband's got this killer plan to expand online store.
Custom designs.
We just need a co-signer for the loan. 70 grand. Your credit's spotless.
Ava.
You barely use it anyway. I felt my stomach twist. Spotless because I'd been scraping by, paying off community college loans while working doubles at the pharmacy, studying for my nursing cert on stolen lunch breaks. I can't, I said quietly, but firm, my voice steady even as my hands clenched in my lap. If it defaults, I'm on the hook. I don't have the bandwidth or the cash to cover that. Mom let out a short, dismissive laugh, the kind that made you feel small. That's just fear talking. Honey, mind over matter. We've always pulled through as a family. Isabella rolled her eyes, that familiar smirk tugging at her lips. Come on, don't be selfish. You've been crashing here rent-free for years. This is how you give back. Rent-free? I'd been cooking dinners, scrubbing bathrooms, running errands for Dad's doctor visits. But in their eyes, I was the freeloader, the backup plan, while Isabella, the golden one, got endless second chances. Dad finally cleared his throat, but he didn't look at me. If your mom thinks it's best, that was it. His default mode, defer to Valerie. Avoid the fray. I shook my head, standing up slowly. I'm not signing. End of story. The silence that followed was deafening. Like I'd dropped a bomb in the middle of Sunday dinner. Mom's face hardened, her eyes narrowing. Then you can't just keep living here like nothing's changed. We all pull our weight. It wasn't a bluff, it was a line drawn in the sand. Isabella leaned back, sipping her iced latte, her expression smug as if she'd won some invisible game. As I turned to leave the room, she whispered just loud enough for me to hear. Jealousy doesn't suit you.
Sis.
Get a real life. That night, I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling cracks I'd memorized years ago. The house felt colder, the walls closing in. I'd always been the quiet one, the reliable fixer, but never the favorite. Isabella's mistakes were learning experiences, like the time she wrecked Mom's car and got a new one gifted to her. Mine? Lectures on responsibility. I pulled out my journal from under the mattress, scribbling in the dim light. Family isn't blood, it's who shows up when it counts. But who was showing up for me? The next morning, Breakfast was a ghost town. Mom flipped through her recipe book at the counter, ignoring my good morning. Isabella hummed tunelessly while pouring cereal. Her back to me. Dad mumbled something about the weather into his coffee mug. 3 days of this Arctic chill, me tiptoeing through shared spaces, eating alone in my room, the weight of unspoken words pressing down like fog. Then, at dinner, over rubbery pork chops and instant mashed potatoes, Isabella struck again. She set her fork down with a clink, leaning forward with that theatrical flair. You know, if Mom and Dad could do it over, they'd probably just have one kid. The perfect one. She laughed, light and cutting, like it was a joke. Dad coughed awkwardly into his napkin. Mom didn't flinch, didn't correct her, just kept chewing as if nothing had been said. I pushed my chair back, the scrape echoing in the quiet. No one met my eyes. In my room, door locked, I sat on the floor, back against the bed, letting the stings sink in. It wasn't the words, it was the echo of agreement in their silence. The indifference that said I didn't matter. Mom knocked the next day, barging in without waiting. You're acting like a child, sulking over nothing. I looked up from my textbook, words bubbling up unfiltered. This family doesn't work for me anymore. Her eyes flashed. If that's how you feel, then maybe it's time you go. And don't expect to call me Mom if you walk out that door. The words hung there, sharp as glass. I didn't argue. Instead, I started packing essentials first: clothes, laptop, nursing notes, a faded photo of me at graduation that they'd never bothered to hang. No rush, no drama, just quiet resolve. That evening, as I passed Isabella in the hall, she called out sweetly, "Don't forget an umbrella, looks like rain." I smiled faintly. Won't need it where I'm going. The accusation came out of nowhere, slicing through the afternoon like a sudden chill. I was in the basement, sorting laundry, my usual invisible chore, when Mom's voice echoed down the stairs.
Ava.
Come up here. I folded the last towel, climbing up to find her in the kitchen, arms crossed, a prescription bottle in her hand. This is empty. My pain meds. You work at a pharmacy. Care to explain? Her tone was calm, but laced with suspicion, like she'd already decided the verdict. Isabella hovered in the doorway, her expression a mix of faux concern and glee. No one's accusing you.
But
You've been off lately. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, not from guilt, but from the sheer audacity. I didn't touch them. Check the refill date. It's due tomorrow. Mom shook her head. You've got access. And with your attitude. Dad lingered in the background, silent as ever, his neutrality a betrayal all its own. I marched to my room, rummaged through my drawer, and returned with the receipt from last week's pickup.
here.
Proof. I slapped it on the counter. Don't mistake your paranoia for care. No apologies followed. Just more silence. Thicker now.
Poisoned.
That night, a slip of paper appeared under my door, an invoice for rent, utilities, groceries, handwritten in Dad's blocky script. They wanted $800 a month, retroactive.
Me.
Who'd been contributing in sweat and silence for years. Isabella? She'd lived here post-college. No bills, no questions, while launching her string of failed side hustles on their dime. I crumpled the paper, whispering to myself, blood may be thick, but it can still spill. I called my friend Lena that night, voice steady despite the knot in my throat. I need a couch. Just for a bit. She didn't hesitate. Come over.
Now.
Packing the rest was mechanical: books, charger, that one sweater that still smelled like home. The house breathed around me, doors creaking, whispers filtering through walls. Isabella's laughter from the living room. Mom's murmured agreements. Dad's TV droning sports scores. I zipped my duffel, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out the front door into the biting wind. No goodbyes. No scenes. Just the click of the latch behind me. Final as a period. Lena's apartment was a lifeline, cozy, cluttered with books and plants. The kind of place that felt lived in without judgment. She hugged me tight at the door. What happened? I sank onto her couch. The story spilling out in fragments. The loan demand. The accusations. The indifference. She listened, nodding, then said softly, "You're not the problem. They are." For the first time in days. I cried, not sobs. Just quiet tears that washed away the grime of unmet expectations. Days blurred into survival mode. I crashed on her pullout, job hunting during breaks, studying at the library to avoid overstaying. The silence from home was absolute, no calls, no texts. But then, scrolling social media one evening, I saw it, Isabella's post. A meme about ungrateful siblings who bite the hand that feeds them, captioned family first. Unless you're the drama. Likes poured in from aunts, cousins. Comments like stay strong. Bella. I screenshotted it, adding to a growing folder on my phone. Evidence, not for court, but for my sanity. Dinner at Lena's that night was takeout pizza, but the tension from home lingered like a bad aftertaste. My phone buzzed mid-bite. Mom. We expect you to handle Dad's meds refills and appointments. You're the responsible one. I stared at the screen. Responsible? While Isabella built her empire on their handouts. I typed back, "Not my job anymore." The reply came fast, "Don't be childish. This is family." I turned off my phone, heart pounding. Lena squeezed my hand. "You're free now. Act like it." Freedom tasted bittersweet. I found a temp gig at a clinic, enough for a deposit on a sublet. But the weight of erasure gnawed, erased from conversations, from plans, from their narrative. Then, one rainy afternoon, digging through my bag for keys, my fingers brushed old lottery tickets I'd bought on a whim months ago. Laughing bitterly, I scratched them at Lena's kitchen table. The first three, nothing. The fourth, matching numbers. $3 million. My breath caught. Lena peeked over, then yelped. "Holy!" I shushed her, hiding the ticket. "No one knows. Not yet." Claiming the prize was a whirlwind of secrecy. Lawyers. Private meetings. No fanfare. The advisor, a sharp woman named Sarah, nodded as I signed. Smart keeping it quiet. The deposit hit like a quiet earthquake. $3 million. After taxes. I didn't splurge. No cars. No trips. Just stability, a small apartment, paid off loans, a buffer against the world. Lena celebrated with cheap wine. To new beginnings. But my mind raced to them. How would they react? Part of me wanted to vanish. Another craved confrontation. The knock started 3 days later. Dad at Lena's door. Looking weary. "We need to talk. As a family." I let him in, but kept distance. "About what?" He shifted. "Come home." Things got heated. Heated? Like the time they accused me of theft? I shook my head. "I'm good here." He left without argument. But the text followed. "Moms, we miss you. Isabella's, don't be dramatic." No apologies. Just entitlement. I scheduled the meeting on my terms, a neutral coffee shop downtown. 6 p.m. 1 hour. They arrived late. Mom leading. Isabella trailing with her signature pout. Dad silent. I placed a folder on the table, screenshots. Bills. That rent invoice. "This is what you did. This is why I left." Isabella scoffed. Overreacting much? We were joking. Mom's eyes softened falsely. We never meant to push you out. Dad stared at his hands. I leaned in. You didn't push. You erased. No yelling. Just truth. I stood, leaving the folder. Open it or don't. But know this. I'm done pretending. The aftermath was radio silence, broken by peripheral whispers, cousins texting support, friends sharing Isabella's passive-aggressive posts. Sarah helped untangle the financial mess, my name off joint accounts, fraud notices for unauthorized charges. A packet arrived at their door, legal docs. A note, not revenge. Correction. Freedom deepened. I started a fund for aspiring nurses from tough homes, anonymous, meaningful. One evening, a letter slipped under my door. Dad's handwriting. If you'd been the only child, things might have been different. I tucked it away, unanswered. Closure, not confrontation. Weeks later, another envelope, Mom's cursive apology sketch. We didn't realize. Families heal. I whispered, too late, and filed it. Sunlight filtered through my new curtains, warming the hardwood floors of the loft I'd rented. Simple.
Mine.
No more tiptoeing. I sipped coffee on the balcony. Journaling. They let me go. I let them fade. The fund launched quietly. First scholarship to a single mom chasing her RN. Lena toasted at brunch. You built this. Real friends. Chosen family. Then, the awards night, a local nod for community impact. I spotted them in the crowd. Mom in her best dress. Isabella flashing smiles.
Dad, awkward.
As I accepted the plaque, Mom approached. Hand out. So proud. Cameras flashed. I ignored the hand, turning to the mic. True growth happens in silence. Without spotlights. The applause felt earned. Their faces. Irrelevant. Voicemails followed. Dad's regretful, I should have spoken up. Deleted. The foundation grew more grants. Quiet change. I walked old streets. Taped a final envelope to their door. Disowned papers. A photo of me leaving at dawn. Your story ends here. Mine begins. Months later. Spring bloomed, mirroring my peace. The loft became a hub for plans, investments, travel, therapy sessions unraveling old knots. Money amplified freedom, but distance healed. A text from an unknown. Dinner?
Ignored.
At a gala for the fund, I spoke. We define ourselves beyond origins. No family in sight. The question lingered. Can blood mend when indifference scars? I chose forward, leaving echoes behind.